Hello, welcome to Spatial at UNCP. I'm Jesse Rouse from the Department of Geology and Geography.
Hello, I'm Nathan Philippi from the Department of Geology and Geography.
And this week we are going to be talking about the dreaded COVID-19 and how we
Ah!
try to better understand it visually in terms of its impacts on us. We don't have data that's looking at daily new cases.
So it's
We're
not a
using,
dashboard.
well, we are actually using the data from the Johns Hopkins, I can't say it, Johns Hopkins, there we go, dashboard. So we're using the same data that they're using and providing um, whenever we're going to be talking about it today.
Well, it's just not going to be live like on the dashboard.
Hmm?
Or some dashboards, I should say.
We what?
How the numbers change by hour or whatnot.
Yes, I think they do theirs once a day
Yeah.
as they get the data from the various state health officials. Um, so this is from I did a snapshot from 7/7. So even though we're recording this on July 8th, it's all data from the 7th. So
Yesterday?
yesterday.
Ah, okay.
And I can't, I'm not sure if it included the 60,000 new cases that were yesterday or if that was posted after I
We're
put the data. Who knows?
going to be a couple thousand cases behind the way we're going.
For
But if
April.
everybody got it, then we don't have to worry about it anymore, right? So let's just
Yeah.
keep forging ahead.
So it's an ongoing issue and it's something that I think we're all interested in. So we're going to take a look at how we can look at this data and in some ways how it can be misleading and how we can make it say in many ways what we want it to say. Um, and this ties into ethical issues and best practices issues that we're just going to touch the surface of, not really go into at all. Just be aware that there's a very significant morass of issues underlying what we're going to talk about today.
Well,
And
remember, there was that idea of, what is that saying, lying with maps ever since that book came out in the 1990s. But, it's always been an issue with cartography because you can only put so much data on any given uh, paper or however you're going to be presenting this on or electronic device. And one of the things to keep in mind is that maps aren't they're not reports in general. We don't want to use text. It's not a paper or a book. It's an image. It's an illustration of data to show to give people a quick view of what's out there. And sometimes things have to be left off, and sometimes things have to be a little exaggerated to show a point.
so to get us started, we're going to go with some very basic visualization. You can see the counties and you can see the data that is the coronavirus cases here. You're seeing basically a point for each county that has had a case at least, a reported case. So again, these are total numbers since the beginning of the data collection. This isn't a specific period. Same thing in terms of deaths that you'll see in here as well. These are totals, not just recent. Now, to give you an idea of how I got this, this is ArcGIS Pro, so a little bit different interface, but um, Johns Hopkins dashboard is using Esri's story maps and their dashboard capabilities to distribute this information. So it's all actually in Esri's data. So I'm just going to come in using the Living Atlas, which you do have to use credits, but we've got tons of credits if you want to have an account. And I'm just going to type in COVID. And you can see that right here at the top, COVID-19 cases for the US. We have world data as well and other sources in addition. But since everybody's been going to this, we're going to use it. So I made a copy of that again. So if I added it now, it would be today's data. But I wanted to use a local copy so I would know what the data was going to look like beforehand, basically. So I could prep. Any thoughts?
Never.
What would you like to do with these points?
Well, I guess to differentiate them first of all, so we know what it is that we're looking at. I mean, they're all the same.
Okay. So maybe do the same thing that they've been using and use graduated symbols.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can use graduated symbols. These are taking data, and right now, as you can see, it's using confirmed data. It's red, of course, on the Johns Hopkins dashboard, but here it's just using a default color of yellow. We can change that if we want to. Come
Well,
in.
you can really see the urban centers as being hotspots, can't you?
Yeah.
Just pop right out.
So this is what we get whenever we're just using, again, those points from their dashboard. Now, we're just looking at the contiguous states. I cropped out the data from the other states so that we have a nicer image to look at. Whenever we look at this, though, points aren't really the best way to talk about counties, right?
Right.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you have any thoughts on presenting
County
counties as
data?
points?
Oh, I like points. I find confusing because I mean, if you use the dot, make the dot as a symbol, the number of dots per case, they cluster together, sort of like what they're doing up in the megalopolis region from what is that, Boston down to Richmond over there on the East Coast. I mean, sure, you have those large dots, but the large dots are, you know, unless you zoom in like that, you can't really tell where exactly they're happening. So thematic maps are often, right? Themed
Yep, and
colors.
that's why we went through, or I went through and attached the information from the point data to the counties. So
Yeah,
this is using spatial join. So spatial join um, is a tool that you can get to through the geoprocessing toolbar, which allows you to take data from two coincident data sets, so as long as they inhabit the same area, and basically join the data from one to the other. And so I joined the data from the points to the county polygons. And that gets us to the ability to come in here and change these from single symbols to graduated colors. And that's just using the default value. So we're going to come down here and look at confirmed. Change the color of this counties in the background so that you can tell the difference. We'll make it a kind of a darker color so you can see the counties that don't have data available. This generally means they have not had any cases, but it could also just mean haven't provided data, which is less likely. What are your thoughts whenever you look at this map?
sort of certainly makes it look a lot less prevalent, doesn't it? I mean, you can see it a lot better in the urban centers more so than in the rural. And if you don't look at the numbers closely, I mean, the yellow represents what is that, roughly 10,000 cases,
Just
9,000,
under
10,000
10,000.
cases. I mean, you could almost look at that and be like, well, gee, nothing is really happening in the majority of the counties. But again, that's misleading, as you were pointing out. So you do have to pay attention to what you're looking at. Are you adding more classes to show
Yeah,
the
just
distribution?
to spread it out, spread the values out a little bit. But as you can see, even by spreading the values out, we're not really changing the fundamental statement of the map. It's not
No.
really saying much different. It's still saying the urban areas, much like those circles, we're saying the urban areas are the places to watch out for, and you don't have to worry about anywhere else. But again, these are still places that have up to 2,500 cases that are in yellow.
Yeah,
So
we
what
could
is,
certainly see a better distribution of them when you add more classes to that. You can see up in the northeast there, that megalopolis region that we were talking about earlier, where those large circles were associated. That you can, with the colors, you can tell specifically which counties have been the hardest hit.
mhm.
I
Excuse me.
think when we were talking about this, I mentioned that this is a themed map because we're talking about a specific theme. because you're using colors with this, it's actually a choropleth map, right?
Yes, the name is interchangeable.
Yeah.
I prefer thematic because it makes the idea of what it is clearer. But yes, us as cartographers would talk about choropleth.
Yeah. I use themed a lot more as a generalization too, but there are people out there that are like, well, that's using colors, so it's a choropleth. All right. Make everybody happy.
Yes, we will recognize your terminology as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is using natural breaks. Natural breaks is a pattern recognition, basically, a model of the data that finds areas that are clustered data and basically finds the breaks between those clusters. And it's really good at finding those natural breaks in data, which a lot of times is really useful whenever you're trying to visualize data. But as you can see, whenever we have such a wide range and such highs and such lows within that range, natural breaks doesn't actually give us a good representation of the data because we have a jump from, what is it, 116,000 cases to 217,000 cases, whereas we have a jump at the bottom end from 2,000 to 9,000. So it's a very different set of scales. Now we could go through and talk about equal intervals, so we're not finding these standardized or numerical rankings that the natural breaks gives us. But it doesn't give us too much different because, again, we have very high highs and very low lows. So outside of Manhattan, Cook County, and LA County, Orange County, maybe, you know, more or less everything else is very low whenever you look at it as equal interval. In this case, we're really more interested in understanding the range of the values and looking at it from kind of a center value perspective, a mean value, if you will. And so here with quantiles, it's the same thing as the idea of quartiles, where we have a center value and we're looking at the range above and below that. Quartiles, of course, you have 25% and then 50% above and below the mean value. Here I have six classes, so we're looking at the center value and I don't know, what is one third of 50? Two of those. I should have done eight. I could have done the math there. Um, Actually, let's do that real quick. So I
Yeah.
can say 12.5% in each of the categories. So we're centered on the 50% value. So we're around 204 as being our mean, somewhere in that range. I could pull up this data and find the statistical mean, and maybe we'll do that later. But as you can see, it's much more meaningful in
Yeah.
terms of understanding the impact on the U.S.
This is Quantile is often used. I often use it the most, anyways. Whenever I create a statistical map, and this is more than likely what people are seeing on the news if they're brave enough to be following this. Uh, because as you say, it shows the distribution more realistically, or in a way that is more realistic and comprehensive. So you can really tell that um, this rotten situation is still very prevalent.
And again, these are total numbers, not recent numbers, but it's something that is building. Yeah, I mean it's um, a significant issue. So we're looking at confirmed cases. We're looking at it by quantile. We do also have a geometric interval. So whereas quantile uses a center value, this uses basically a building value. So we're basically going in multiples of about 4.5 for each one. So from 12 to 58, from 58 to 236 is another 4 point. So from 236 to 933 is 4 point X times that. So we're um, looking at essentially what is almost a logarithmic, but not quite a log. But yes, we're multiplying each time by the same thing. Is that a log? My brain is
And
broken. Log is 10. Okay, good. So not quite a log.
Yeah.
It's close, in terms of concept at least. So Quantile gives us a building from that center value. This gives us more representation of those lower values, especially. Again, I think both of us agree that the Quantile, for this data at least, it feels a little bit more truer to um, the issues that we've been facing in the country.
Yeah.
Now you may say to yourself, well, okay, well, these are total numbers, but what about how this relates to the population?
Have to divide it.
Well, what if we go through and normalize our total by population? Now we have population from 2017. That's one of the newer good data sets from the census, from American Community Survey. So we can build on that.
Yeah. Not
So
really.
now
Wow.
we're normalizing by population. And we can see that even normalized by population, many of the same areas are standing out. If you want to kind of de-emphasize the urban areas, because so far all of this has still continued to emphasize our urban areas, we also have the population per square mile here. So if we normalize not by population, but by population density, then we begin to change things very significantly.
Wow.
We understand that, yes, the urban areas, especially New York and such, have had a significant impact, but now we can understand the rural areas, even though they have low numbers, even if they have low numbers per population area, if we look at the density of that population, it really highlights those rural areas. And so we can come down to eastern North Carolina and see that those rural areas really are significantly hit. Yes, Raleigh and Charlotte are significantly impacted, but
Look at Robinson County.
Robinson County is red. You are surprisingly in a county that is a little bit lower. I'm in a county that's very red and getting redder every day. Um, I think our highest day was last week with 300 in a single day. Um, Over the
It's
holiday
interesting that,
weekend, we dropped back down into the 100 range, but I'm expecting it to jump back up today as we get Monday's numbers.
and one of the things that we've noticed, so you might be, if you're in Robinson County and you're like, well, why is Robinson County right now so in the red with that? We don't, Robinson County isn't a big tourist attraction place like where you live, Jesse, and then school obviously is not in session, so it's not drawing up that population. So one of the things that was found early is counties that have a lot of manufacturing within them have very high occurrences of the COVID.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the people hospitalized, whenever I captured the data, that was all blank. So I would have liked to have talked about that a little bit, but
No,
not able
yeah, that
to.
would have been a good one. That's too bad.
But just to give you an idea, so if you look at the Western Rockies and Intermontane area, and even the western portion of the plains, right now, of course, this is showing the population per square mile, and then I'm going to switch it back to not being impacted. And you can see this whole area suddenly becomes much, much less red, much more orange, more yellows, whereas it was very red whenever you look at it based on population density. So again, everything we do with these numbers and how we show these maps um, have an impact on the message that people take away from them. Thoughts on that?
No,
No? Okay.
sorry. I'm just amazed that the Southwest is just uh, so prevalent out
So
there right
so
now.
high numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about numbers over 1,000. Oh, this is Quantile still. Okay. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
So
but I always like seeing maps like this and data that's been arranged within, particularly within a themed or a corpus, because it gets me excited about geography.
Now, we did want to finish out with a little bit of analysis as well. And there are a lot of things we can do with this in terms of geostatistics, in terms of regular statistics, in terms of doing overlays with other data sets. There are training classes. I did want to highlight that very quickly, if I can remember where I put it. There we go. Um, as I mentioned before, esri.com/training. Once you have an ArcGIS Online account, you can use that here to do any of Esri's training because that's part of our license.
And remember, if you want an account, you contact Dr. Rouse and he can set you up.
It, um, and so, if you're at UNCP, that is.
Yes, yeah, UNCP.
We can just type in health and we get everything from infant mortality, newborn health issues to, of course, the training that's tied to COVID-19. They have, as it says, 7 different training modules that are tied to that. Um, mapping breast cancer differences by ethnicity, hospital capacity by state. So there's lots of different things that you can look at in terms of health, in terms of disease, and of course in your area of research as well. Uh, and again, it's all free training that you can take advantage of to better understand the software, but also things that you can give your students to better understand the spatial nature of some of the concepts that you're looking at. So here we're looking at hotspot. I abhor the term hotspot, but they adopted the
What would you
term.
call it?
Well, I mean, it's a get us a word, um, essentially regression that this would be looking at and generating. But again, if you haven't done geostats, you don't know what that is. So I guess hotspot doesn't kill us. So I'm just going to go with this.
Get us an ord.
Ooh, it's going slow today.
A lot of data.
Well, it hasn't done anything yet. So that's the, it was
Oh.
just opening the tool. So this is based on point data. So we're going to use the cases. We're going to use confirmed. I'm going to output to cases hotspots, or actually let's change that to cases confirmed. And from here, I'm just going to take the rest as the default values. As I click on run, shouldn't take too long, and it's going to go through the data, and it's going to find those areas that are clustered either on the high end of things or the low end things. So you can see over here we have hot spots versus cold spots. West Virginia, as someone who lived there for many years, but we can see those areas that are hot spots. And again, you can see this as part of the point data itself, but this gives you, a little bit clearer picture of those areas that are standing out. Whether it is the Southwest, as you were noting before, that area around Dallas and Houston, southern portions of Florida, the megalopolis, Detroit, and basically Chicago and around the lake. So those are our hotspots for confirmed cases. But we can also look at data, and we haven't looked at this yet, in terms of deaths. And since I haven't run this myself yet, I'm kind of curious to see if that's going to basically line up with these areas or if there's going to be a difference. So turn off confirmed. Yeah, so it's very similar. Again, it's a smaller number, but it's very surprising how this kind of extends
Oh,
out of Detroit and into other
yeah.
portions of Ohio with deaths. We have the Southwest still. Suddenly we have, I believe because of that outbreak early on, um, tied
Louisiana.
to, yeah, tied to Mardi Gras. We have that cluster down in New Orleans and the surrounding parishes, and then, of course, southern portions of Florida. as well. So these are using points to still highlight things, but rasters are also our friend. Don't you agree?
Sure. You use raster more than I do.
I do, but that
Raster's faster, right?
should still be your friend, right?
Yep.
Analysis, that's what I wanted. So I'm going to come down to uh, cases July 7th. It was confirmed. So here we're using kriging, and we're going to use ordinary kriging to predict what these surfaces should look like. Now again, there's not a lot of prediction because we have a point for every county, but this is going to interpolate values between each of the points that exist here. I'm going to let it optimize the model so we get a little bit more clustering going on. It's kind of a weird looking line, but it'll do for our quick example here. So we're going to let that finish up. Take these counties and make them hollow so we can still see where the counties are. Symbology, there we go. Make it just a little lighter so it's a little bit easier to see. Oh, too late.
Too late. Make them red. Or not.
Make them red. Hold on, I had to wait.
Oh.
There we go. Red works. Kind of competing with the orange, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So we can see those areas of highs and lows in this predicted surface. You can see the values attached to this surface. Where did there it is. Drag this up so a bit easier to see. Of course, then I put it in front of counties. There we go. Now you should be able to see the value ranges. So the very reds, which we only have a very few pixels of the very red, uh, are from 69,000 to 217,000. But really, what's more, we're seeing these numbers from 22 to 69, these darker areas. And of course, because of edge effects, it's being pulled offshore as well. But this area of that corridor we were seeing before, again, Michigan, over here, here,
Chicago.
here,
Yep. Southern Florida.
here. But things that didn't jump out as much were some of these areas in,
Colorado?
yes, Washington, Minneapolis, for instance. It's out here. What is this, Iowa?
Yes. No, actually, that's St. Louis.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Um, yeah, Arkansas and such, Tennessee, in this area on either side of the that big river, Mississippi. There we go.
But you can still see that the South is still very high, and you still get that. For instance, as you pointed out, within West Virginia, you get that. It's cooler. It's blue, and then also within the Midwestern, the frontal range before you get to the Rockies is low with distribution too. So even though this is more in detail, right, and specific of showing cases, it still lines up with those. I'm going to use the term generic uh, uh, maps that we were showing earlier. Does that make sense?
Does.
Okay.
I'm trying to do it right now. Might be because it's a base layer that I can't make it transparent, but
Oh,
I
yeah, you
wanted
can.
I wanted to highlight the fact that, of course, we have kind of a drop in cases in the highest portions of the Rockies and the Appalachians as well. So you're seeing a little bit of disconnect as well as between communities because of the mountains, as well as potentially other political issues in places like West Virginia and over here in eastern Kentucky, western too, of course.
Environmental determinism, right?
I'm not saying it determines it. I'm just saying you can see an effect in those areas, whether it's tied to people not moving around as much because they're in the mountains, because
I know.
there's lower populations in the mountains. We could go on for days about that, but you can see the influence of those mountainous areas in the data. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Um,
Well, I mean, the idea is true. I mean, because if you take your pointer up there and go up to northern Minnesota,
mhm.
you notice that there's blue up there where the Great Lakes are. I mean, it's fairly empty and not densely populated. It's been my understanding that the tourism is slowed down a bit up there. But if you go towards the left, towards North Dakota, so that yellow spot right there, and then go down, that area is a big spot for fishing. No, go up right there, yeah, for
Oh,
fishing and stuff.
yeah.
So you can see that as people have been leaving the cities and going up into that region between Moorhead and Park Rapids and oh, I can't remember the other not Del Rapids, not important, but that's a big touristy site for fishing people this time of year. So you can see that that's sort of a hot spot. So I mean, you know, how we were talking about this with environmental determinism, right? I mean, we also have draws for places, so not necessarily mountains as being a deterrent, but also forests as being a deterrent too.
Yeah. So not so much about a determinant, but being a pull factor or a push factor
Yeah,
in some ways. Yeah. So just a factor of many that, has led to various counties having different
yeah.
levels
Because
of pollution.
central Nevada there is blue, and that's just desert.
Yeah.
Whereas as you go further south, you can see that Las Vegas, the county with Las Vegas in it, is rather hot. Rooftop.
So this is what it looks like when mapped by county, mapped by raster. Again, it's using these values for each county to create the raster, but as you can see, there's a little bit of variation because of the statistical pulls in one way or the other for the surrounding counties. Okay, is that about it for the day?
Yeah, that was interesting. I thought.
So we
Quick
haven't done
five.
any actual analysis. Again, we're using data from the you
Hopkins.
say that,
John Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins.
Just say John Hopkins. They know who they are.
But there's an S at the end, so it
It
just
doesn't matter. Everybody knows who Johns Hopkins is.
but my brain or something within me keeps trying to add a Hopkins.
Hopkins.
So I'm trying to add
Johns
an extra
Hopkins.
S now.
Johns Hopkins.
Hopefully everybody's laughing at this and my inability to say that word.
No, they stopped listening about 20 minutes
Probably yes.
ago.
Okay, so yeah, so we're using their data and we're not doing anything in terms of adding data to theirs. And really, if you wanted to model issues of expansion, you would need different data in terms of being able to see daily or weekly or monthly totals by state. Um, that's not quickly available. It may be out there, but in my 4 minutes of looking for data beyond this, I didn't find it quickly. Um,
Yeah, CDC doesn't even really have anything like that either, if I remember correctly. Though I haven't looked at it for a couple of weeks now.
yeah, since I wanted to do this quickly, I actually wanted to start with North Carolina, um, but the NCDHHS provides the data on a dashboard now, and I couldn't find the download site. And I'm pretty sure it still exists, but I think I deleted the email where the original data download was from. So if you do want to get access to data, this really is one of the easiest ways just to grab the existing data and work with it.
Have you looked at the university's dashboard yet?
I don't believe they include any data.
Oh, okay.
So that dashboard is more informational dashboard as opposed to data dashboard.
I haven't visited it yet. I was wondering if it was just about the campus or what.
Yeah, yeah. So if you go to, well, I have a browser open here somewhere. There we go. UNCP, COVID. Is the dashboard? Yep, this I believe is the, yeah, this is it. So basically, it's just a lot of links and
No.
information for people to help, uh, you know, inform themselves as much as anything else as people are coming back onto campus. It's going to be an interesting situation. We're getting new data all the time. Our numbers, well, so you do have some numbers. We've
Yeah.
had 5 students and 1 employee who have been infected. I'm a little surprised. Some of the other schools I've looked at, their numbers and the subcontractors are much higher. So clearly, our construction workers are doing a fairly good job of staying away from folks who are contagious. But I got to say, if you haven't been on campus, the new BA building is moving along, and the old West building is losing more pieces every day, it seems. Though I'm sure they're getting ready to start rebuilding it from the portions they took off. It's some interesting changes. And if you want to see what the top of the new business building looks like, you can watch the last video where I show some drone photos from just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Anything else? Was it?
Yeah, I thought so.
Okay. I don't know. I think we're done.
Yeah, I think we covered it pretty good.
Okay.
At least me.
Bye.